I would love to hear what it's like from your vantage point. How hard is it right now to keep up with demand?
Well, first, Emily, thank you for having me here today. I think how we got ourselves in this position of this big shortage is really a journey that started about 15 years ago with the advent of the smartphone. We started to see that a compute-centric industry, that was one that went to the smallest and tiniest transistors to do compute function only, started to evolve to, wow, look at all the features we can put in devices. So we could put a touch screen, we could put secure transactions so we can do pay remotely from the cash register. We could put audio chips. We could use our phone to take pictures. We have a touch screen that is easier to manipulate through features on the phone. We have power management chips to make the battery last longer. And all of a sudden, this industry went from a compute-centric mindset, we went down kind of scaling Moore's law, to pervasive deployment of semiconductors. And by the way, that's where GF plays. All those functions I described is where we make chips for our customers, 250 of them strong. We make them worldwide. And so what really happened was the beginning of that journey 15 years ago from a compute-centric industry to a pervasive compute became accelerated. You know, the unfortunate pandemic of 2020 really had technology adoption that normally would take a decade, happened essentially in a year. And not only are more devices being sold, more content of semiconductors go in each device. And so we entered the pandemic with the industry thinking we had a 5% growth. We're today looking out, the industry for the next 5 years has a 9% growth. And as you've heard earlier on your program, putting capacity on is not something you just do in a week. It's by the minute you say go, and I'm going to order equipment, a company like GF, it's probably a year out before we can produce just the wafers, not even the final product for our customers. We have to buy the equipment, install the equipment, qualify the equipment, and then begin production. And so this shortage is going to be with us well into 2022. I don't think the demand is perishable. I think it stays.
Now, you will be attending the CHIP Summit at the White House next week. What is the one thing that you would like President Biden to do?
Well, I certainly seen all the reporting as well on the plans for this meeting. I don't have any specifics on that meeting, but I can tell you, there's a tremendous amount of energy and interest in semiconductors in Washington. And as a key player in the US and globally, GF is included in these discussions. Our job is to provide constructive input, perspective. What's the types of industrial policy that can help the US achieve its objectives? I think the important thing right now is let's get that CHIPS bill funded so that we can accelerate manufacturing capacity in the US.
Let's talk about that, because TSMC is the biggest player in the foundry market, then it's Samsung, and you are, of course, a big player in the United States. But do you believe that's problematic, especially when it comes to US and China competitiveness and, the speculation that China has been stockpiling chips through the trade war?
Look, I think, we say, what are we trying to solve here? The US has led the semiconductor industry since the beginning. The US invented the transistor. And if you look at this $500 billion semiconductor industry we all participate in, about 50% of that industry is supported by US headquartered companies, but only 12% is manufactured in the US. And this is what's creating that dynamic, that issue, supply chain security, national security, and even economic. I mean, semiconductors are at the heart of a $91 trillion world economy. And all regions of the world, China, Europe, want to make sure that they have the capability to build semiconductors. The US now is adjusting industrial policy so that they could make the investments other regions of the world have made in partnership with business to create more manufacturing in the US.
Now, we're all waiting, last quick question, Tom, for GlobalFoundries to go public. Wouldn't now be a good time when there's all this surge in demand? Are you accelerating your timeline? Could we see it this year?
I think for us, it's always been about going to the public markets when we hit certain financial and performance targets for our business to make sure we capture the true value of this enterprise. And that discussion's always been sometime in 2022. We always view our strategic alternatives, but for us right now, we are laser focused on continuing to get as much out of the capacity we have on the ground now and investing as fast as we can to increase this capacity so that we can help do our part and getting this supply demand better aligned.